Hi, everybody. My name is Jasmine. I'm 16, and endless parental control still makes me mad. My dad raised me all by himself, and I have always been a little princess to him. All was going well until Jasmine met her Aladdin, and I had no idea I could hate my father. A year ago, I met a nice guy. My Aladdin's name was Derek. We were introduced by mutual friends, and since that day, we have never spent time apart. Suck it, skeptics. Love at first sight does exist. But this is just the beginning of the story. Derek is my first love, so when I told my dad about him, I hoped he'd be happy for me. He has always been the best daddy. But instead of the expected joy, he started asking me about Derek. Who Derek was, what his family was like, what his plans were for life and the future. How should I put it? Derek is from a poor family. He is only 16, so he had no special plans for his future either. But I knew the most important thing. I knew Derek loved me. But unfortunately, my dad was not satisfied with this answer. So immediately, without meeting him, he forbade me from seeing him. He said he wouldn't let some ragamuffin be with his little princess. After that, we had a big fight. How could he know who I wanted? Up until that moment, I didn't think that for a dad, a guy being poor was some kind of life sentence. I needed to vent, and I, quietly in my room, called Derek on the phone. It was then that he first compared himself to Aladdin. He said that he was sorry that he does not have a magic lamp with a genie, which would have solved all his financial problems. But at the same time, he cheered me up and gave me confidence that he and I would come up with something. Unfortunately, our troubles were far from over. Dad must have passed by my room and overheard our conversation. He was very angry that I had disobeyed him so quickly. He yelled at me and took the phone away. I was speechless. I lied there in silence and thought, was it really about the money? Later, Dad came back into my room. He apologized for overreacting and returned my phone, but insisted that I, for my own good, stop communicating with Derek. Yeah, okay, sure. I was not going to stop anything. Since then, Derek and I started to communicate only by text, and we agreed to meet secretly, just in case. What can I say? Secret meetings are scary. I had to keep making up stories to tell my dad so he wouldn't get suspicious. But Derek and I only thought of it as a temporary obstacle, because after I turn 18, I can do whatever I want. You know? After a while, we even got used to these meetings and came up with stories automatically. One evening, Derek asked me to go for a walk around the lake. With all these limitations, I always enjoyed any kind of romantic gesture. I told my dad I was going to see a friend tonight, and he said he didn't mind. Well, I met Derek at the specified place and time. The cuteness of the setting was literally unreal. But I think you know how dating works. At one point, Derek moved closer to me and reached out to kiss me. The moon, the lake, the best moment you could think of. But unfortunately, it was the moment of my dad's sudden appearance. He came up behind us and started screaming. He told Derek to get away from me and ordered me to go home fast. Derek said he loved me and tried to comfort my dad, but my dad wouldn't listen. He told Derek to not come near me, and he led me home by my hand. I walked home in tears and could not understand how he knew where we were. At home, I calmed down a little and began to think. After Derek and I agreed on a time and a place, I deleted the chat. So even if he knew my passwords, he could not have read my messages anywhere. As I walked, I kept turning around, and there was no trail behind me, so the only option left was that my father had the ability to track my location. But he's not some military man, and there's no way he could have bugged me. I finally figured it out in the end. I remembered that while I was talking to Derek, Dad took my phone away from me. Then it dawned on me, and I began to go through all the folders on my phone with downloads. Voila! In one of these folders, I found a program that parents use to spy on their younger children. Hello, let me introduce myself. I'm Jasmine, and I'm 3 years old. I didn't know what was going on with my dad. This was my first love, hopefully my only one, and he's already watching me. Of course, my discovery wouldn't change my dad's attitude toward Derek, but at least I knew how to outwit him now. Now, every time Derek and I secretly went out, I just gave my phone to the friend my dad thought I was with. And in general, this worked for a little while. We had a happy week, but one day, without warning, my father decided to pick me up from my friend's house. But I wasn't there, as you've probably figured out. When I went back for the phone, my friend told me that my dad had stopped by, but when I wasn't there, he left in rage. I walked home with a clear understanding of what was about to happen. As soon as I entered the house, he snapped. He screamed so loud. I cried, but what surprised me the most was that he blamed Derek for everything, that I'd changed and kept lying to him. The fact that I was hiding from him, in his mind, it was all Derek's fault. Dad wasn't listening to me, and he didn't want to even try to realize that he was the one who was forcing me to do this. In any case, the situation was getting heated. Since I had learned about the tracking program, he could no longer control my movements. So he stupidly sentenced me to house arrest. Now, right after school, I had to come straight home, and if I was more than 5 minutes late, he'd take my phone for the rest of the day. I used to be sad just because he wouldn't accept Derek. But after he started terrorizing me at every turn, I gradually began to hate him. I saw Derek at school, and we discussed what to do next. We both felt that the only way out for us was to run away from home, but we didn't know where to run or where we could find money. The only thing we could really do was wait until we were 18 years old and only then try to come up with something. And it seemed that for the sake of love, you could wait as long as possible. But it was unbearable. At best, we saw each other a couple of times a day and only on break from our classes. In fact, we were lucky to be in the same school. If not, we would have stopped seeing each other altogether. In general, in this desperate setting, I came up with a desperate plan. One day, I refused to leave the house and started a hunger strike. But the hunger strike was no joking matter. I was dead serious. He kept saying that a relationship with Derek could hurt me, but I didn't think it could hurt me any more than starving to death. At first, he probably thought I was just trying to scare him. But after a day and a half, he knew I was serious. He didn't go to work, sat with me, and tried to tempt me with food. But I was adamant. At one point, he went somewhere for a couple of hours, which really surprised me. But when he came back and saw I hadn't touched the food, he gave up. Unfortunately, this is not the end of the story. I thought it was time to celebrate, and at that moment I was ready to run to Derek and fall into his arms. But it turned out that it was still too soon. Dad went to start talking to me, telling me that he would let me go out with Derek, of course, but he said he wasn't sure if Derek would want to go out with me. I didn't know what my dad meant, but he explained. In the couple of hours he'd been gone, he went to Derek's house and offered him a choice. Either he could stay with me, but there was no way to tell how long our love would last, or he would give him $1,000 if Derek would stop talking to me. Derek took the money. I couldn't believe it. Why would my dad do that? Why did Derek take the money? He didn't answer his phone, and I was starting to freak out. I was crying and yelling at my dad, but he decided to explain himself and reveal his secret since the situation was just starting to escalate. My father said that my mother, who I thought had died in my childhood, was alive and well. She and my father adored each other, or so it seemed to my father, but about a year after I was born, my mother ran away from us with another man. At that very moment, Dad, who was now forever disillusioned by love, decided that I was the only thing he had to live for. Then Dad told himself he'd only let me be with someone he was 1,000,000% sure of. I didn't know what to think. My mother is still alive, but she left us. Dad just ruined my relationship, but I think I'm starting to understand why. Derek told me he loved me, and he took the money? I wasn't sure of anything except that I was living inside some melodrama. I was exhausted and broken. My head was full of incoherent questions. What? How? Why? Why? But there was a knock on the door, and you won't believe this. It was Derek. His appearance instantly dispelled all the clouds in my head. He was holding a huge bouquet of flowers and told my dad that he would not trade me for any amount of money. He took a little for the flowers from that 1,000, but promised to return it all. It was the act of a real 16-year-old man. Dad appreciated that, too. He apologized to Derek for thinking badly of him and apologized to us for interfering with our relationship. He said he hoped we wouldn't repeat his and Mom's fate. Fortunately, my story ended happily. Have your parents ever tried to interfere with your love? Tell us about it in the comments and share this video with your friends. Bye!